A pastor from Bridgeport, Connecticut is sending a message tonight to anyone thinking about stealing his car. That message is his property isn't going anywhere without a fight. The pastor was having dinner just outside Baltimore last month when he was approached by three people, one armed with a handgun. After a struggle, the bandit was able to drive off with the vehicle, but the story doesn't end there.
You know, in all my years covering criminal justice related topics or individual crimes, I never thought I would tell you a story where a Baltimore teen carjacker learned a bit of a lesson, and that lesson was don't mess with Bridgeport, don't mess with Connecticut. But in this particular video, this carjacker approached a Bridgeport, Connecticut based pastor who was visiting in the city of Baltimore, and he got a little bit more than he bargained for when, despite the fact that he was armed and he thought he had the advantage, this pastor ended up tackling to the ground in such an epic way, in such a wonderful way, that honestly and genuinely, many of you have to go to the link in the description under where it says sources and watch this clip in full, because for a large part of this encounter, this pastor, our hero of the day, handled it. He gave the hand of justice, the hand of God, to smite this individual, and it was only the mercy of the Lord that ended up letting this teen suspect get out of this situation, because in reality, he should have crushed him and continued to pound on him even after he realized that he was just a teen. Yes, this is a story of a black pastor handling business, and I'm 100% here for it. But before we get into that, we gotta say thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
I'm all in the face. I'm punching him. The gun, I get the gun out of his hand, and that's why the gun's at the front of the car.
It sounds dramatic, and surveillance video shows just how violent it was. A struggle between an armed carjacker and, yes, a man of the cloth, a church pastor in fear for his life.
So first of all, one of the things that I absolutely love about the local news is whenever they do goofy things like this, and recreating the beatdown that he laid on this armed suspect during the course of this carjacking, to me is absolutely hilarious. Now, they ultimately end up cutting to the surveillance video, and I will show you this freeze frame right here where you can actually see the firearm on the ground exactly where it's described by the pastor, and the fight actually makes its way over to the sidewalk, where at one point the pastor, who is 53 years old, ends up getting on top of the suspect, and he's wailing on him, he's beating on him, and deservedly so. And to be clear, even though this suspect is a teen, even though he's an urban youth, even though a lot of people will say he's an innocent Beba Angel Aladdin, he should not have let up. The one mistake that this pastor made was letting this suspect get up, and that ultimately ended up costing him his car. But fortunately, it did not lead to him losing his life, because the suspect was able to retrieve the gun and point it at him before he ended up taking off in the vehicle. And by the way, thankfully in this particular case, the suspect was arrested. This man has his car back, but the fact is, he showed, at least for part of this encounter, exactly how to handle these thugs, these criminals, and I have nothing but respect for him. Even for him realizing that he's a teen and having empathy for the teen, it's understandable. I think it's misplaced and it could have cost him his life, but he's living up to the values that he preaches, so I actually understand that as well.
I'm an urban kid, and to see what he has, I saw a size. I knew I could take him. But in no way, I want to make sure you're clear, I wasn't trying to be a hero.
Now again, when you watch the surveillance video, at one point in time, the suspect is pinned to the ground. He has him, and he describes, looking at the size of this particular suspect, sizing him up really quickly and realizing that he can take this guy. Now, he says he wasn't trying to be a hero, but make no mistake about it, putting up this fight, putting up this resistance, and ultimately capturing him, if he was able to do that, definitely would have been heroic, because the fact is, it's only a matter of time before these felons who commit these thefts using firearms eventually fire off those firearms and ultimately end up leading to killing someone. And by the way, this is a problem that we talked about in the city of Baltimore time and time again, where their juvenile offender laws are too soft. They end up letting repeat offenders off. And even though Ivan Bates has decided to target gun criminals because he understands that eventually they will reoffend and they will likely kill someone, the fact is, crime and gun crime in Baltimore Baltimore is extraordinarily high, even if it's reduced from the Marilyn Mosby levels, even if it's reduced from the Black Lives Matter levels, which again, Marilyn Mosby ended up introducing in 2015 when she got fully behind the Freddie Gray hoax and started focusing on letting black criminals go free while targeting officers.
10 days ago, Reverend Kenneth Moles Jr. traveled to Baltimore from Bridgeport, where he's the pastor of Cathedral of the Holy Spirit. He was parked outside of a restaurant when the suspect approached, pretending he needed help with his phone. Moles says adrenaline kicked in, and once the gun was on the ground and he had his attacker pinned, did he realize he was fighting with a teenager.
And I said to the young man at that point, I'm a pastor. I'm a pastor. I'm not going to press charges. I'm going to let you go. You got to stop this. This is crazy.
So again, while I love this guy and I love his energy, I love the tackle, I love the fact that he was able to disarm the criminal, the fact is he should not have shown this empathy here. And I understand he's a Christian man, he's a pastor. I 100% get that he wants to help these youths, but the fact is not pressing charges on a gun offender, on a carjacker, ultimately is going to lead to situations where said gun offender ends up committing a crime where he ultimately ends up killing someone. I know it's hard for people to understand that don't live around these types of teens, that don't understand this type of criminality, but the fact is, even though they're age 14 to 24, and that seems rather young, and we're talking about someone on the younger side of that, those are the peak offending years for these criminals. So those are the years where a lot of these teens, these urban youths, end up racking up their first body and rack up a ton of felonies. So going soft on them, not pressing charges, actually puts more people in danger. And one of the things that he's upset by, but it's understandable when you get the context of the city of Baltimore, is the fact that this teen, this urban youth, didn't give a damn that he was a pastor. He didn't care at all, and he was willing to fight and potentially kill him for a vehicle because, again, these teens have no morality. Again, they are predators. They need to be removed from the streets. After we remove them from society, we could talk about rehabilitation programs, but a slap on the wrist or refusing to press charges, that is not going to lead to good outcomes. So in this regard, this guy definitely wrong. Letting him up, definitely wrong. And unfortunately, it could have led to a situation where he or someone else was killed.
Undeterred, the teen breaks free, picks up a sneaker that had come off, then picks up the gun, gets into the car, and points the weapon before eventually driving off in the Audi.
Now again, while everything this guy did up until this point was aces, everything he did was all to the good, and I'm 100% in support of it, after the suspect has gotten up, after you've shown physical resistance, and he's picked up the firearm, approaching the car in this way can very likely lead to a bad outcome. It could very likely lead to your death, and that would be absolutely tragic because, again, this pastor from Bridgeport, Connecticut clearly and obviously has a good heart. He clearly and obviously has moral standards that he's willing to risk his life for, and it would be really unfortunate if he were to be killed in this particular story, and it would essentially change the whole dynamic of this situation and how I'm covering it. So again, I like the resistance, I like fighting back, I like separating the criminal from the gun, I like pinning him down, but letting him up when you think he's a teenager, terrible idea, and approaching the vehicle after he's already retrieved his firearm, also an awful idea, also very likely to lead to you getting shot, possibly killed by this individual, because the instant gratification of getting in your Audi supersedes any kind of morality for these types of individuals.
Mole's wife got a call from the hospital. After making sure her husband was okay, she says she went on a rant.
When somebody has a gun, you just obey and get out the way and preserve your life. But after he explained it to me, I understood why. There was a chance that the gunman could have shot him anyway.
So we get a cut from his wife, and his wife says, just give up the car, it's not worth your life, and I totally understand that perspective, but I also like the fact that he made his case to her, and she ends up supporting him. And by the way, it is unsurprising that the black pastor who drives an Audi, who actually lives in a nice part of Connecticut, has a wife, a stable family system, and all these positive things going for him, while by contrast, if you were to look at the background of the urban youth who is committing the crime against him, you would see that it probably comes from a broken home, probably doesn't have any connection with the church or with the Lord or anything of the sort, and is just the complete and polar opposite of the individual that he was going to take out. But again, I will also highlight that this is one of the reasons why policing is so important for Black communities, because what ultimately ends up happening is you're good people that do the right things throughout the course of their lives. They earn their money. They actually support and participate in the community. Those are the people who end up at risk. Those are the people who end up facing death. Those are the people that end up being victimized much more than any other outside group of people. Again, we highlight Black on Black crime for a reason. It's important. It's a crucial part of the story. But one of the most crucial reasons is that the victims very often disproportionately are Black, and even the people doing the right thing, even the people who aren't committing crimes, they end up subject to that rampant criminality.
The 53-year-old, who will be elevated to bishop next year, says he's already forgiven the 16-year-old suspect who was arrested a short time later.
I'm more hurt as an African American pastor that once I let him know I was a pastor, that he didn't care. He had no reverence for me, didn't honor the office of a pastor.
So he ends up forgiving this individual, which honestly is not surprising. The guy is a pastor. Obviously, he has this morality and whatnot. You guys know how I feel about forgiving criminals that don't actually do anything in order to seek that redemption. You guys know how I feel about forgiving somebody who is willing to potentially take your life for a piece of property, but that is his prerogative. He is allowed to do that, just in the same way he was allowed to show mercy to this individual once he realized that he was a teenager. I just fully and wholeheartedly disagree with that. But he also expresses how he was very upset that there was no reverence for the office of a pastor from this individual, from this youth. And it's really unfortunate because I'm sure he has intervened positively in a lot of urban youth's life throughout his role as a pastor, but he just doesn't seem to get how far gone these kids, these teens in the city of Baltimore actually are.
A 15-year-old and a 19-year-old have also been charged. Pastor Mole says this isn't a Baltimore problem and says he is pivoting his ministry to focus on the youth.
Now, not seen in that particular video, you have two other suspects, one age 15, one age 19. And if these suspects would have intervened physically, again, it could have resulted in this pastor's death. He could have lost his life over a vehicle because these teens, these urban youths, didn't give a damn about him as a person, and his wife would be a widow. But it's actually kind of positive that this guy has decided that he's going to tilt his ministry more towards working with urban youths. Also, he was stated to be promoted to a bishop, or set to be promoted to a bishop. I think that's great. I would honestly promote him to a rook, much more powerful piece on the chessboard, but that's just my opinion. But of course, I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. What do you think of this guy fighting off the teen, then showing him mercy, and then the way that he spoke about it after, and anything in between? As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a pastor versus a Baltimore teen. Till next time.